listening to Resist and Restore, a podcast from the Circle of Hope Pastors, where we're extending the table of our dialogue. I'm Jonny Rashid. I use he, him pronouns.
I'm Rachel Sensenig. I use she, her pronouns.
Julie Hoke, she, her.
Ben White, he, him.
Great to have you on the show, y'all. We have a good show here. Ben and I are going to talk about the Bible in the middle of it. We're going to start with talkback and end with what's been nourishing our soul. Rachel has a great piece from her Sunday meeting where we worship on Sundays, where we do talkback, and she's going to share about that right now.
Yes, thanks, Johnny. Our talkback in the park this Sunday was so relatable. We looked at the story of Jesus beginning his ministry by getting up in the temple and saying, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." And people got so upset about some of the things that he was saying that they tried to throw him off the cliff. And as we were talking about this, our friend Paul said, there are often moments in my day where I feel like I'm gonna go off the cliff too. It just feels inevitable, that there's no other option. I'm gonna get thrown off the cliff by the troubles that I'm dealing with, my anger or my despair, whatever it is. It feels inevitable that I'm going off the cliff, and he was saying, I'm saved by this reminder of God kind of swooping into this moment and making a way for Jesus instead to slip through the crowd and not go off the cliff that day. He wasn't going to die that day. And so...
Not today!
Not today was exactly what Paul was saying he wanted to hang on to. So how do you guys work with it? Like, how do you keep yourselves... What pushes you to the edge of that cliff, and how do you keep yourselves from going off it? Or how do you let God save you from going off of it?
Yeah, because it's definitely a miracle. It's kind of an unsung miracle that Jesus just slips through the crowd. Like, what happened there? Sometimes I imagine that Jesus just kind of looks everybody in the eye and just stares them down and, like, walks through like total baller, you know? Unlikely when the people are, like, about to throw him off a cliff.
Right,
that his,
they wouldn't
like,
miss him.
Macho energy is kind of, like... That's the Jesus that I want. I want him to just like flinch at everyone. You know, just like I'm gonna walk right through here and be mad and strong. Unlikely. Probably more miraculous. Probably more like he disappeared, like Philip getting disappeared and going to another town in the Book of Acts. Something more mysterious. And I imagine was more likely, but we don't know exactly how that was. So. Oh, you go ahead, Julie. I have one other thing to say, but I'll get it in a sec.
I was just going to say, I imagine that disappearing, I imagine it more like the chaos of the crowd. This kind of gets maybe to what Paul is speaking about. I don't know, because I wasn't in that conversation, but I feel like the chaos of our internal or external chaos that we face, like does cause us to miss Jesus. So I imagine that crowd in their chaos and their rage just missing him because they're so blinded by their own anger and defensiveness and, righteous or supposed self-righteousness or whatever it is that brought them to the cliff to throw him off. And he just slips through calmly and quietly while the chaos surges.
Yes.
Sorry, Ben, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to connect it to this theme that we've got going about beginning again. That's our theme for our Sunday meetings, both our at-home Sunday meeting. Check that out on YouTube, or if you're in the Philly area, you can connect to us in person at our 4 different locations. Check it out at circleofhope.church. Yeah, see that? I want to talk to you. I want to connect to you. Please come and join us. But what I've been saying about it is the world has gone to crap in the past 18 months. And it seems like there's like this kind of, we might be beginning again something, and but it's all just kind of happening to us. And one of the benefits of kind of having this moment of pause, instead of getting thrown off the cliff, we could claim what's happening and just kind of name it and see it. Hey, we're beginning. I didn't create this moment, but since I'm here, I might as well begin, since that's what we're doing, and do it consciously. And nothing new necessarily even happens, but I happen newly. And that's one of the things that I think is really helpful in that moment that Paul is describing, when I'm just so angry or so reactive or even so chaotic like the crowd, is to reframe. The power of reframing this to get a little bit of perspective, to pause and say, what's actually happening?
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Johnny?
In verse 18 and 19, he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of the sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." He does that in the temple, in the synagogue, and they get really mad when he identifies with the prophets, and they try to push him out. So for me, the things that I say can sometimes anger people, and they want to push me off the cliff. And God protects me in that. I think the key here is, if I'm reading this right, in verse 30, he walked through the crowd and went on his way. The crowd saved him because he angered the people in the synagogue, and there was a lot of other people around. Jesus grew the ire of the religious leaders, who were Sadducees, but the Pharisees and Jesus had a different kind of relationship, and they had won the favor of the people. And so if you go to 31, he says, "Then he went to Capernaum, a town in Galilee. On the Sabbath, he taught the people, and they were amazed at his teaching, because his words had authority." The crowd protected Jesus, or at least some of them, because they weren't all opposed to him. And I think what keeps me from going off the cliff is continuing to find the people that are moving with the Spirit and not against Jesus, and trying to push me and others off the cliff. So that's how I'm entering into this. I think that Jesus had... the message he proclaimed allowed him to connect with ordinary people, even if it offended the people who would eventually kill him, which, the ruling religious party at the time were the Sadducees. And that's where Jesus' major conflict went. That's who, Caiaphas was a Sadducee. So I think for us, trusting that God will protect us even when we say things that affront and confront the powers, who are opposed to God. That takes a lot of courage. For me, I don't want to do that. I want to acquiesce. I want to compromise. I want to fit in. I want to assimilate. This is the whole journey of my life. But to actually stand up and be myself and face the possibility of hostile people that want to push me over, that's scary. I have to get up and prepare myself to do that. I don't want to do that. That's totally not in my psychology or my upbringing or anything.
Yes, Johnny, thank you for sharing that. That's really where we landed that morning, in going back to Jesus's proclamation that the Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and how he shares that with us, and how can we take on that mantle, that anointing. We actually anointed ourselves with a little bit of oil, not as some like magical potion, but as this symbol of who we are in Christ, that the Spirit of the Lord is on each of us. And so we too can stay off the edges of those cliffs. We can slip through the crowd. We can bind up the brokenhearted. I love the Isaiah. Jesus is quoting Isaiah, and how Isaiah talks about the oppressed as the brokenhearted. And so we can be these kind of people like Jesus too.
Excellent. So glad you're listening to our podcast. We want to keep extending the table of our dialogue, so please email us, resist and restore podcast at circleofhope.net. My confession to you is that no one has emailed us in a while. So if you're listening to this, just email us. That doesn't have to be profound. Just say, hi, I'm listening, and that's fine. I just want to have that relationship with you. And if you have anything to add to the dialogue, we'll definitely put you on during Talkback, because we want to keep extending the table of our dialogue. If you want to support our show, you can share money in our comment fund. Go to circleofhope.church to do that. And this isn't like a Patreon that just supports this show and the people on it. It actually supports a bigger movement of God in Circle of Hope, so it connects you to something bigger that we're doing. And if you want to get further connected to that, you can check out Sales or Sunday meetings, as Ben was saying too. Those are ways that you can connect with our community. Some of them are local, some of them are online, so wherever you are, we'll get you in somehow. And also like the show. And if you see it on social media, like it and share it. If you're on a podcast app, subscribe to the channel and then give us a positive review. Evidently, if we get more positive reviews with feedback on them, more people can see it who are looking for this kind of show. So you help us get the word out that way. Even if you're not a review type person and you don't subscribe to a lot of podcasts, doing that on the app that you listen to this would really help us. So those are ways that you can connect with us. And we want to connect with you further too. So again, email us at resistandrestorepodcast@circleofhope.net.
All right, y'all, let's talk about the Bible. This is an ongoing series that we have here on the Resist and Restore podcast, where we're talking to the individual pastors about, I guess, kind of their take on the Bible, their approach, or really just kind of putting them on the nice warm seat. Not the hot seat, just the nice warm seat. Just a nice warm, cozy seat to have a little chat about the Bible. And it's Johnny's turn, so I'm interviewing you, Jonny Rashid, about the Bible. You'll probably say something really, really interesting that we can make a soundbite and call this whole podcast. We'll just title it whatever brilliant thing you say.
We shall see.
So now you are on the hot seat. Sorry, because you have to say something that's really cute or interesting that I can make the title of this podcast.
Well, I'll try my best.
Let's not mention that again, though, because that'll be very distracting.
Okay,
like when you say the thing, I'm just gonna be like in my head. I'm gonna.
That's right. That's a good way to do it.
He said it, but I'm not gonna point it out. All right.
Great.
And while you're listening, friends, don't just listen for sound bites. Take it all in. Bring your own heart to this. You know, that we're extending the table of our dialogue. So write us about it too. If Johnny says something that you want to talk back to, we'd love to hear it from you. Resist and Restore podcast at circleofhope.net. So in preparation for this, Johnny, what did you do? Did you study? Did you do your homework?
Well, I think I just did my normal thing, and this week I happened to be in the Bible for a few different reasons, and so my mind is full of Bible things right now.
Is that how you say it? Like, I'm just in the Bible? I was in the Bible this week?
Yeah, I mean, what really, it is for me, I'm a pastor, so it's part of my job. I'm a Christian, so it's part of my life. But I have to also say, I find it fun, so it's like a hobby too. Like, even it's even recreational at times for me.
Yo, triple threat. You're just a Bible guy. In preparation for this, for me, I looked at a few of the blog posts that you wrote about the Bible over the past few years, and you write about the Bible often, so it's easy to kind of see some of your pre-digested thought. And if y'all want to check that out, it's JonnyRashid.com.
Yeah, JonnyRashid.com.
He writes there every week without fail. If he goes on vacation, he writes an extra one from before, or he'll republish an old one. There's always something new from Johnny, and it always has the Bible in it. So that's a great resource for you if you're interested in that. You say one of the I'd say kind of catchphrases that you've had with me comes from I think it's Dietrich Bonhoeffer, right? You know what I'm going to say?
I don't.
Or no, it's Niebuhr. It's Niebuhr. It's Niebuhr. It's not Bonhoeffer. The Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other.
I think that's Karl Barth.
Really? It's Barth?
Yeah, it's
one
Barth.
of those.
Sorry.
One of those guys. Early 20th century guys. It's Karl Barth, huh? Okay. I went to Princeton. I should know everything about Karl Barth. I do not.
They really like Barth over there.
Oh man, they love Barth at Princeton Theological Seminary. I took like 2 Barth classes.
That's awesome. That's pretty intense.
And I haven't thought about him since.
Ben's, as you'll find out later, Ben's a George MacDonald guy.
Oh, they know that already.
They know
Unless
that
this is
already,
your first
okay.
time, but you would have felt it from me. Like it would the George MacDonald energy, just from the sound of my voice. I hope that it's penetrating their at least like their heart of hearts. Anyway, this isn't about me. This is and I wouldn't say you're a Karl Barth guy either, but you are definitely a Bible guy. So let's get into this. You said that there's not a right way to read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There isn't a right education level in your view. I like this, what you said. All you need is an open heart and mind and an earnestness and the Spirit of God living in you and in community to give it a shot. So I think that's a pretty good list to get started with the Bible, because that's what we're working on here. What do you need to read the Bible, Jonny Rashid? Your answers are 1, an open heart. 2, an open mind. 3, earnestness. 4, the Spirit of God, and community. 5.
I love
that
all those
word
things.
earnestness. Earnestness. It's a hard one to say. Say earnestness.
Earnestness.
It's a hard one. Yeah. Can you say more about what you mean by that one in specifically?
I think that, I believe you have to want to read it. You know, if there's an imposition where you have to, or you're not holy or not good enough, that isn't a great starting ground. But if you're interested in the stories and you want to engage, I think that a good faith reading of the Bible will be nourishing. And I think a lot of different kinds of people do this. I don't think it's just super religious church every week people, because I think the stories themselves connect you to people. And if you read it in good faith, if you want to read it just to dissect it, you could do that and maybe God will work. If you want to read it to take it down, maybe God would work that way. But I think if you want to read it to get to know the community and the people that wrote this, to learn a little bit about history of these people and have a relationship with them, that earnest attention to it, I think, makes it a much more nourishing and fun and even poetic experience.
So earnestness for you is about good faith, like letting it be what it is and receiving what it has to give on kind of its terms, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Of course, you come with your own terms. Everyone reads the Bible through their lens and from their context, but just that posture of, I'm gonna, would you say, submit to this a little bit? I know that might be hard for some people.
I would say engage in it like it's a good friend of yours. You know, like it's a dialogue partner, like it's someone that you love. You know, that you want to get to know more. That's kind of how I see it, because getting to know the Bible is about getting to know the writers of the Bible, these people that were inspired by God, that love God, that want to share what God put on their heart. You know, I think that's how relational this compilation of books is. This holy canon, this gift that we have from all kinds of people that have related to God too. It's a wonderful way. I mean, maybe part of the good faith effort is, hey, I want to relate to God more, and I want to relate to God deeper. Let me start having some engagement with these people that have done it for a long time and that people have preserved for so long. That's the beauty of the Bible. I mean, we might get into inspiration and questions like that, but the Bible is holy because it has been so useful for so long for so many followers of God. You know, it has longevity, and it's still speaking to us.
Yeah, sometimes we want to try to take it back to the genuine article and try to analyze it on its own, like, kind of murky historical terms, when we could, just do it with the community of believers and, like, well, you know, it was really good for a lot of people. And that's like data that sometimes gets lost when we start analyzing.
Totally.
We take ourselves out of the place where we live. You know, we try to do the Bible in this abstract kind of way. And that's not our fault, because we were set up to engage history that way too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when Christianity and in Europe tried to compete with modern history and modern science, the Bible kind of shifted. How we treated the Bible changed, and we put it up against. We tested it using means that to use a big word, were anachronistic. Like we took something from the current era and tried to superimpose it on something from the past and try to make it make sense. But I think that is actually erasing the story of these people, and not actually relating to. It's not relationship. It's not dialogical. It's technical. It's using it like it's a compilation of facts or something like that.
Yeah, it makes it really hard to relate to the Bible as your friend if the Bible has that kind of stain on it or rust on it, this kind of imposed problem, that's mostly, like you said, anachronistic or completely intellectual, not very relational. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's get into that though, because it's not like that kind of modern project and modern biblical studies is a bad thing, even if it comes, like, it might have a legacy, but we're kind of getting a handle on that, and we're addressing that kind of Eurocentrism, and we're addressing some of the problems that might have come out of that movement, I think, like we being like the church at large or biblical studies at large. And you're way into those biblical studies. Like you're up into that. Like you were talking about, this is your, not just your vocation as a pastor or your calling as a Christian. It's also your like avocation. You love doing this. Like a fun Friday night for you is reading a thick theological text. So you're an unapologetic Bible nerd. And on your blog, you gave us some insight for Bible nerd fights and how they can kind of get in the way of some good stuff. Like the fruit of the Bible nerddom sometimes gets caught up in the back and forth. So let me just read what you said. Bible nerds are a dangerous group of people. They can be exclusive, mean to each other, and isolating. In fact, I've been accused more than once about not being a, quote, biblical enough dude, or not being, quote, scriptural enough. So yeah, nerd fights can sting. We too often forget that people don't love the Bible the same way as us and don't want to sort through it in the same way. I don't think that gives you a blank check to do whatever you want with the Bible, but I do think that Bible nerds are sometimes lose sight of the fact that not everyone is as into the Bible as we are. So trying to inspire people to love the Bible as you do is very tricky. And I wouldn't say that I can get into that nerd stuff too. So especially when you're bringing all this passion that you have personally, how do you translate that passion for Circle of Hope? What are some of your personal outlets for that passion? And what are some of the ways that you've done some translation of that kind of different world that you come from sometimes when you're bringing the Bible to your people?
Well, I do love to, when I'm doing study and research, talking to people that want to engage me on that is helpful for me just to process. So it gives me an outlet. Like I find people that want to relate to me on that. But when I'm leading and when I'm helping people, when I'm preaching or teaching the Bible, I really try not to show my work, so to speak. We're really trying to get something very succinct down that's relatable and applicable. Because the Bible itself, sometimes we expand it so much, and then it's hard to kind of bring it all together, you know? Like, let's say you're making a meal for someone, and you just want to feed them something, you know? Showing them your messy kitchen in the process isn't very hospitable. And so there are people that want to cook the food with me, but not everyone wants to do that. And maybe if the meal is tasty enough or nourishing enough, you might want to learn how to make it too. That type of thing. Like, and maybe you can even engage in the process. In a Circle of Hope, you would do talkback. Like one of the things we're doing right now that I love is we're going through stories in the Bible where Jesus is beginning new things. Begin again, again. We've said it before.
Begin again, again.
And I use a passage of the Bible and I walk through it. And then, this is the first time I've done this, or maybe not the first, but I'm doing it more frequently. I pause before I give my interpretation of the passage and say, hey, what do y'all think of this? You just read this. There's nothing, I kind of walk through it, point out some contextual things that could be important, and then they give me their interpretation because the community has something to say about it. And I want them to have an encounter with it because they exist, because they live in the world, because the Spirit of God is in them and they relate to God, you can say something about this now. And I think your heart matters more than your mind here. For me, the mind stuff helps me engage, helps me know the people that wrote it and connect with them. But there has to be a practical end to it. One of the issues with biblical studies is it is an end unto itself. And I think that's okay in like seminary and academia and things like that, because that's the world they live in. But the Bible is very interested in the things that actually matter, the fruit that is actually born. You know, it's funny that even if you read the Bible, you're moved to do that. Jesus is very interested in the practicalities of ministry and of following God. And so for me, we have to have a very practical, tangible end to our biblical studies, or else it isn't very valuable. And in my opinion, that practical end, you know, according to Paul in 1 Corinthians 13, is love. Like, it actually has to help us love one another, love God more, love creation more. That's the end of it. And it's a tool to reveal God to us to do that. I think a lot of times we get into arguments about language, meaning, history, and we get lost in the weeds. And we think the things that are really important are these technical matters, where the Bible is an emotional and relational book, and living too. The Spirit of God is in it, and so those kind of heart encounters matter more than this very technical approach, which I enjoy doing. But if
like the end of academia is knowledge, and that is its stated purpose, and that's not a bad thing, because the knowledge is then delivered to the church for its use. You know, like. But I think that there's, especially when you get into biblical studies, even as just like maybe as your interest, it seems that the church gets preoccupied with that kind of intellectual knowledge as as the end. They get kind of sucked into the academic project, and they forget that their end is to apply and to bear fruit and to love. And it's just a distraction. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like it can be a distraction. Yeah. And you can just kind of all of a sudden think that knowing things about God or about the Bible is the extent of your discipleship.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. I'm not an Anglican, but in the book of Lesser Feasts and Fasts yesterday, they were talking about St. Matthew.
Wait, you were reading the book of Lesser Feasts and Fasts?
I saw something on the internet about it.
Oh yes, you have a great capacity for it.
And the writer of this passage started talking about the how Matthew didn't really write the Gospel of Matthew, and people were saying, why are you bringing that up in this little, like, devotional confessional thing? Like, that's just, on one hand, the Gospel of Matthew doesn't profess to be written by Matthew, so it's not even in the Bible. Second, why are you bringing up this technical thing and what's supposed to be a spiritually nourishing thing? How is this relevant? And so a lot of people were saying this is just pointless to bring up. It's not helpful for the cause. My thought was the only reason a technicality like that would be helpful is if you're trying to get to know what's happening in the story, when it happened, and the occasion of it. And this goes back to what you were talking about in the beginning with the newspaper and the Bible in the hand. The Bible itself speaks to its occasion regularly. Like Pete Enns, one of our favorite people, Ben, describes The Crucible, which is an Arthur Miller play that it's...
Oh yeah, I like that. I like this. Yeah, keep going.
It's about, he says, The Crucible is about the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts, and it's about how they were finding these witches and burning them at the stake. But it was written during the time of McCarthyism, when Joseph McCarthy in the United States was finding communists, or so-called communists, and...
Communist witches.
Exactly. Same kind of thing. And separate... and oppressing them that way, or victimizing them that way, or getting them on lists that way. So Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible to speak to this occasion, and the Bible often is written to speak to an occasion that its audience understands. Now, If you just dwell in why the Genesis 1 is an analogy to Babylonian captivity, and you just sit there, that's like okay. But if you can bring Genesis 1 to our context, now God is speaking to us where we are. And so the only reason at all that you would be concerned in matters like authorship and occasion and date is so that you can bring it to the present moment. But if all you're doing is having a debate about something that, by the way, is purely speculative,
almost purely speculative, but
Almost.
so speculative that it's completely dismissible in my opinion.
that's true. If that's what you're doing, then that's not good enough. You have to bring it to the present. The question that pastors and readers of the Bible need to answer, in my opinion, is for themselves. How does this help me right now, and how does it help my people? Christianity really does need to have an immediate, tangible benefit. This is what we're doing in Circle of Hope. We want the church to make your life better right now, and not just in the age to come, though that is promised to us. And though we await it and impatiently, we're patiently impatient for that day to come. But right now it helps. It helps our communities. It helps our families. It helps our relationships. And if we can bring the Bible to do that now, it no longer is a very old, fairly esoteric book that most people don't know what it has anything to do with them.
Yeah, so I think we can bring it into the present now with this quote from another one of your blog posts. You said that the Bible was written for the poor and oppressed by the poor and oppressed. That's one of those kind of, this is the context that then we can now bring to our context because people are still poor and oppressed now. I think that you're absolutely right. So how does this understanding of, I think this is kind of elemental to your understanding of how you read the whole Bible. And it's a big part of how Circle of Hope reads the Bible too, kind of from the bottom up. So expand upon that now. Like bring this reality. The Bible was written for the poor and the oppressed by the poor and the oppressed. That's your line. I like it. We could say it. I'm going to say it one more time. The Bible was written for the poor and oppressed by the poor and the oppressed.
Well, one of the reasons I wrote that is because the Bible has been used for oppression too often. Oppression of women, oppression of minorities, justification of slavery. You know, it's amazing. It is incredible to me. Exodus 15, it's very early in the Bible. God is freeing slaves. And somehow you get enslavers in the United States using it to justify what they're doing. And what I love is this. Enslaved people got a hold of the Bible and realized God was telling them something different. I mean, that's the beauty of the Bible and of God and of Christianity, that it can be used to oppress you, but when you get your hands on it and when you see it and when you live it, it actually liberates you. There is nothing more, there is no further evidence for me of God being alive than this tool that was used to oppress you. When you got it, actually liberated you and actually freed you. I mean, that story, that witness, that testifying really motivates me. It's amazing.
Well, and the slavers knew that it would do that. They were not misinformed. And that's what they fought tooth and nail to keep the slaves illiterate and keep the Bible preaching out of their hands, except by their, oppressive preachers.
So, I think the powers like to take a hold of the Bible and do exactly what you said, because otherwise it is so threatening. But from the very beginning, it's a story of liberated people, and a whole nation is made of these people, and God continues to protect them, not through military might and through political power, through other means. And in fact, when they dabble in those things, they get in trouble, they get thrown into captivity, and then they wait for God to liberate them. And so God is always with the lowly, the oppressed, throughout the whole story, and inviting everybody else into that. This isn't an exclusive, it's written for the lowly and oppressed, by the lowly and the oppressed, so that we can all collectively self-empty and be humble, so that the last shall be first. I mean, this is not just a story of freedom for the oppressed. It's a story of freedom for all of us, because what shackles us are things like wealth and power and greed and domination. That's what Jesus is freeing us from. And that's what the story of the Bible is. The people of Israel are an insignificant small nation. They are not the Assyrians. They're not the mighty Babylonians. They're not the Persians, the Egyptians, the Romans, the big empires that we hear about. It's a very small empire that didn't last that long and then split into two and then before long was overtaken.
Yeah.
And God uses this very small group to enter into the whole world. I mean, that's, and to us, that teaches us, oh, God is with the lowly and the oppressed. This is good news for you. And then Jesus declares that. It's good news for the poor and the oppressed. I'm here to liberate the oppressed. Mary says that, lowering the hills, raising the valleys. God is coming. God has found favor in his lowly servant because she is lowly. Like that is who God is lifting up.
Yeah, and that was a surprise in the moment, too. The reason Mary busts out in her song in Luke 1 is because it's like, oh, this is what this means. Because they had, for whatever reason, humans are attracted to this this powerful top-down kind of understanding. So, but even by the time the Jesus comes on the scene, they're shocked and appalled by the means by which he's going to do this through the poor. Like that, that it's good news, but it's also a scandal.
Totally.
They say, well, who then can be saved if the rich and the powerful aren't blessed? What?
It is a total backwards, upside down way of thinking, and I think our tradition, the Anabaptist tradition, can really speak to this because we're going for simple living, simple community. And Circle of Hope is like that, and there's other places like that. If you want to connect with us, you can do that, and maybe you'll find a place near you that's like that too. But I do think it is the smallness of it, the lowliness of it, the lack of imperial quality to what the Bible is doing, the disruption that Jesus is creating. Just even in the shame of the cross, as Paul says. We ornament the cross and we make it an imperial sign. That's what it became in Christendom in Europe. But this was
co-opted.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is the shame of the cross is your God died. Where is your God? He succumbed on purpose in some ways. He submitted himself to death in order to defeat it. This is totally a different way to do it. And what the Bible does is provide us with, this is what Walter Brueggemann says, a counter-consciousness to the consciousness of the world. And we're just trying to make it different. And the Bible tells you stories of when they tried to fit into the consciousness of the world and how God disrupts that. And we're constantly pulled to it. This is why theologically and biblically, I know that even though I know I'm redeemed and saved by God, but as I encounter my pull toward my proning to wander, which I don't say much, I am convinced, no, I actually need a Savior to save me. I am hell-bound alone, even though we have opinions about hell. But that phrase, I am going to do this top-down thing. I'm going to be attracted to collecting power and wealth for myself. And God changes that, and I think the story of the Bible changes that, and I think that's why I hold it so tightly, because it's a constant reminder and relationship with these people that we're in the same struggle that I'm in, to pull away from this temptation to try to be on top, to try to be the greatest. Like in Mark 8, where the disciples are it's Mark 9, because in Mark 8, Jesus predicts his death, and then Peter rebukes him on the side, and then Peter says, "Get behind me, Satan." And then Jesus says, "We're all going to take our cross, y'all. This is what they're doing." And they're walking towards Capernaum, where Jesus lives. I think Peter's house is in Capernaum. So he's going back home. They're walking there. And then they go right back into an argument about who's the greatest. Didn't you just listen to me? We're taking up our cross. Stop jockeying for social position in our little tiny group. It's only 12 of us. And then Jesus says, "What were you talking about?" And they're all silent. So what's happening between Mark 8 and Mark 9? Peter says in Mark 8, "Get behind me, Satan." And in Mark 9, they're all silent. These disciples are regressing.
Yes. That's what I was going to say.
They're getting worse.
And we ought to consider ourselves just as prone to regression.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons why you would have a discipline with the Bible, why it is your calling as a Christian to incorporate it into your life, because we need these stories of our ancestors and these stories of people that were right next to Jesus who were having the similar problems that we were having. And especially in an American empire, where Christianity is supposedly is somehow, in a weird kind of untrue way, the law of the land. It's kind of a mind warp. It just does not compute. And to find we can find comfort in the reality that has been the case
Totally
from the beginning. And we must continue to resist and, restore the true witness. That's our name, Resist and Restore Podcast. Any final words, Jonny? You often ask our podcast listeners where people can find you. I already talked about JonnyRashid.com. Yeah, where else can we connect with you from all over the place?
Catch me on Twitter on the same handle at Jonny Rashid, and on Instagram there too if you want to follow the food that I'm cooking, which is a different aspect of my life. Maybe we'll talk about that one day. Go to Food Pasture on Instagram. And I'm writing a book right now called Jesus Takes a Side, and it connects exactly to this idea that the Bible is written for and by the oppressed. It comes out next, the end of May 2020, so June 2022.
2022, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2022. I'll send you can pre-order it now if you want, or talk to me more about it if you like. And this book is about getting people to practically engage in outcomes as they relate to God. It is trying in some ways to, Ben said Christianity is kind of fused with the United States and in the seats of power. This is trying to dethrone Christianity from where it is and help Christians really be advocates for the oppressed in very practical ways, countering the consciousness of the world, knowing that we serve a different Lord, because Jesus is Lord is a political statement, and living in that spirit, and then just practically doing what we can right here to help. So those are ways that you can catch me. We'll put that all in the show notes for you too.
Well, thank you so much, Jonny.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
This has been a good time, and again, write us back at Resist and Restore Podcast at circleofhope.net if you want to get in on the dialogue.
Our last segment here is Spiritual Show and Tell, where we talk about what has been nourishing our souls lately. You get a little glimpse into our personalities and the ways in which God relates to us. God is always relating to all of us all the time. So it's really beautiful to name where that's happening. Hopefully it encourages you to look for things that nourish your soul. And so who wants to get us started?
I can go, Julie. It's what's been nourishing to my soul unintentionally is my kitchen rehab. We are totally rehabbing our kitchen, like totally gutted it. And so, it's a big project, and I like to cook and have family meals together, and that all looks completely different because the house is like there's nothing to cook with, and the house is covered in dust, and like everything's every room of the house is changed to like accommodate all the stuff being moved around. And gas line and water lines have had to be moved, and some of the cabinets and different things still haven't come in on time. And so the project's going to go on even much longer than we want it to. And in all of this, God keeps showing me that God is in the mess. And I have just been amazed at like the family time and even fun that we are having in this. And again, that is not like my natural way of viewing things, but we are like cooking in our basement with camping stuff and this ancient stove that is down there. And we were even playing a card game the other night, like in the, on the dusty table that is now in the living room. And I've just been appreciating that we can still like enjoy one another's company and like this spirit of hospitality, really, even with different friends who have come over, to be kind of in the mess with us. And I've been grateful for that.
I think I was on a Zoom call with you where you were washing your kale in the bathtub or something like that, right?
Wow, that's Kramer in Seinfeld actually does that. Yes, he makes dinner in the shower. So that's you should do that. Cosmo Kramer, Rachel Sensenig thing happening here.
That's
He
an
installs
honor,
a garbage
Johnny.
disposal in the shower.
I know. Yeah, I love that. I think that's actually practical in other ways. Rachel, let me ask you: when you get there are aspects of your kitchen rehab, specifically surrounding kitchen appliances and things like that would nourish my soul. So when you get to that place, just I don't even have to. I just want to hear what's going on.
All of the details.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about that, Johnny.
We need the SKU numbers for the the faucet fixtures.
No, it's the
I don't know
kitchen
about that.
gadgets that Johnny really likes.
I like plumbing
Yes.
too, though. I like
okay.
faucets. I like high pressure situation. I like high water pressure. It's
Yeah.
one of my love languages.
Wow.
Mainly
I
because
don't-
low water pressure is so terrible.
Yeah.
I love the image of you inviting people into the mess with you and seeing the kind of the non-disaster of this. Obviously not a disaster. I'm getting a new kitchen. It could be some like this real stressful thing, and it's being transformed. I'd say that's a evidence of an already nurtured soul. Hey y'all, guess what I'm going to talk about?
George MacDonald.
George MacDonald.
That's right, because it was George MacDonald Day last weekend, September 18th.
Wait, this is a real day, Ben?
Yeah,
It is his feast day.
his feast day when he passed into the great cloud of witnesses, Julie.
I didn't know. Thank you for sharing.
We have canonized him in Circle of Hope.
Celebrating our transhistorical body. Circleofhope.net/transhistorical is my favorite of our blogs. Sorry, everyone else on here who writes blogs, including myself. I love being connected to these people of old. It's not just George MacDonald. My spiritual show and tell is the blog itself and how it connects me across the centuries. And it's, when we're talking earlier about just feeling kind of stuck at the edge of the cliff and like I'm going to feel like I'm just going to jump off and say not today. I think that's the story of the church, is thousands and millions of people who have said not today and decided to carry on and to keep trusting and hoping and doing in the face of great difficulty and greater difficulty perhaps than mine. Probably, definitely some of them. So it was George MacDonald Day. And I just want to read you a quote from him, which speaks to that kind of desire for more and need for God in the extremity of our life. When I can no more stir my soul to move, and life is but the ashes of a fire, when I can but remember that my heart once used to live and love, long and aspire, oh, be thou then the first, the one thou art, be thou the calling, before all answering love, and in me wake hope, fear, boundless desire.
Ben, I joined the George MacDonald Society Facebook group, even though just because of you.
That's love.
You have a great capacity for Facebook groups.
Oh, well, I do, but I just want to, maybe I'll get into, George Mickey D. Can we call him?
He signed his works GMD.
GMD, okay. What's nourishing my soul, friends, is, speaking of blogs, the blog posts from Jordan Burdge and Robert Buck. I'm telling you about. I gave them their last names too, their whole government, because I want you to look them up. They're people in our community that I think it's great when people write stuff down in general. So if you do that and you're my friend, I'm gonna help broadcast that. I want to share what you're saying. And these two are thoughtful and eloquent and interested in Jesus and God and Circle of Hope. And I love that they put their stuff out there, and it touches me. Jordan just wrote a blog post about how humanistic Christianity is, how in touch it is with our bodies, and how it creates fullness in our bodies. And Robert wrote another one about questioning his assumptions about what's right and wrong, considering the body that he occupies. And so I'll share a couple links in the show notes so you can check them out. But that they have blessed me, and I hope they bless you, and I hope that you share their stuff and give their little blogs a little more traffic. It helps. I don't know if they're motivated this way, but more feedback, more responses helps people keep going in this discipline of writing and sharing. So Jordan Burdge and Robert Buck's blogs.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I shared Jordan's this week. I haven't read Robert's yet, but I'm grateful for both of them. Mm-hmm. I think I just want to share with you all about my zinnias. I have these flowers growing in my front yard that had gotten to be almost as tall as me. And they're beautiful assortment of colors. And they're the kind of flower you can cut and they will keep coming back. So I have been cutting bouquets of zinnias all summer and enjoying them. And when the aftermath of the hurricane blew through Philadelphia, the zinnia plants got flattened to the ground. And I was so sad to lose them. And then about 3 days later, I walked out and saw a burst of color in my garden and realized that the plants had literally grown from being flat to the ground. They had curved and grew up to the sun and started blooming again. And that it made me so happy. I have been cutting flowers since and marveling at how the plant could survive being flat to the ground and yet still drawn to the sun. The roots even pulled out from the ground. You can see the roots, but they're still working their way back in. They're staying connected and able to produce. And I love the beauty of flowers, but growing things in general nourishes my soul because it is, it's like this little act of co-creation with God that I'm not in control of, but I'm participating in. And I continually marvel at how, the tenacity of life to keep growing. So my zinnias are nourishing my soul.
That's awesome.
So beautiful. And I got to see them on Monday. They were just so bright and colorful. What a miracle. I hope and pray that's our show, folks, and I hope and pray that it inspires you also to turn your face to the sun, not just the actual sun in the sky, but the incarnation of God in Jesus and his people. So I hope you join us again next time soon. God bless you.
Thanks, Rach.